Unfortunately, DCMS themselves were unable to attend this event in that Caroline Dinenage can't be here. She is the minister who is negotiating a deal and apparently, and has the power to return to the negotiating table. So let's hear what she has to say.
Hello, I'm Caroline Dinenage, the Minister of State for Digital and Culture, and I'm delighted to be speaking at Carry On Touring's UK-EU Summit. It's wonderful to know that so many international delegates are attending this online event from right across the creative and cultural touring sectors. I want to thank all of those involved with Carry On Touring here today, including those organisations who've engaged so constructively with my department as part of the touring working group. The end of freedom of movement inevitably means changes, including for our creative and cultural sectors. Just like the UK, EU member states have the right to control their own borders and arrangements for non-EU workers. But we know how the creative and cultural sectors rely on the ability to move people and equipment across borders quickly and simply, and therefore the particular challenges these sectors face. And these are unprecedented times, further complicated by the pandemic, meaning we haven't been able to see how new arrangements actually work in practice. So, for our friends here from the EU, I want to take the opportunity to reassure you that the UK is very much looking forward to seeing European artists and performers back here in the UK, and that we have in place very generous rules to support that. And for our UK-based delegates, I want to be really clear that we are absolutely committed to supporting you. We have provided an unprecedented package of support for the creative and cultural sectors, including over £1.5 billion through the Culture Recovery Fund. And we're working tirelessly to support you in touring abroad. We know that audiences and venues across the EU want to host our great artists and performers, and we want to help make sure that you can seize these opportunities as soon as it's safe to do so. Firstly, I want to briefly set out the background of what happened during our negotiations with the EU, as I know there are a number of misconceptions right here. In negotiations, we fought for a good deal for our touring sectors. The UK's proposals would have enabled performers, artists and support staff to tour and perform in the EU without needing work permits. I really deeply regret that the EU rejected our proposals. The EU did make their own proposals, but we must be clear that these wouldn't have addressed the sector's main concerns. They weren't binding, they didn't include touring, but only ad hoc performances. They didn't include the all-important technical support staff and didn't address the issue of work permits. We have heard the calls from the sector for an EU-wide visa waiver, but as was the case during negotiations last year, the Commission would be likely to argue that any visa waiver agreement can only be part of a much wider package, and that remains incompatible with the manifesto commitment to take control of our borders. The UK does enable visa-free visits from other EU citizens, but we wish to retain control of how we apply the policy, and no major G7 economy has agreed to lock in their visa system with the EU in this way. Our door, of course, remains open should the EU wish to revisit these issues. But I think it's now really important that we look ahead, with the government and the sector working together to improve the situation. As I mentioned earlier, we've established a working group with representatives from across the creative and cultural sectors, other key government departments and the devolved administrations. This has been a really vital forum to discuss the issues, to build the evidence base and to look at options for further support. I want to reiterate how much I welcome the spirit of collaboration shown by the sector within this forum. Since establishing the working group, we've worked together to address a number of concerns. These include confirming that carnets are not required when musicians accompany portable musical instruments between the EU and UK and vice versa, and confirming that touring artists and support staff from the UK will not be double charged for social security contributions. To help musicians and performers understand the new rules and requirements, we have in the last fortnight published sector-specific landing pages on gov.uk, helping navigation of guidance online. These also provide links to the government's new business traveller guides, provide work permit and visa information for EU member states. And we recognise that visas and work permits are a primary concern for the sector. The government has now held discussions with every member state to encourage them to make their rules and guidance around visas and work permits clear and accessible. Some have already taken steps to improve their guidance, and we will continue to work with our counterparts to promote the need for clarity. Through this work, we have established that in at least 17 out of 27 member states, UK musicians and performers can undertake some touring activities without needing visas or work permits. This includes France, Germany, the Netherlands, and many others. We want to make sure that this information gets to those who need it. There are several organisations in the music and creative industries who have been producing their own guidance in this area, and we're now working with them to discuss our findings and ensure that we have a cleared and shared understanding. The Secretary of State and I are also speaking to our ministerial counterparts in a number of key member states. We're talking to them about the reopening of our respective cultural and creative industries post-COVID and using the opportunity to promote the importance of touring. These have been warm and positive conversations. When talking to my counterparts in member states, I'm always keen to emphasise the UK's generous rules for European musicians and performers. And where member states are willing to align their rules more closely with ours, we will of course encourage them to do so. Finally, I'd just like to touch on cabotage. We recognise that as well as visas and permits, new rules around cabotage are a major concern for the sector. During negotiations, the UK did push for a special derogation from the cabotage restrictions for hauliers carrying equipment for concert tours and similar activities, but the EU rejected this. This is such a complex issue for which there are no simple solutions, but we are working closely to support the Department of Transport and with the creative sectors and the haulage industry themselves to look at what might be done. So I'd just like to conclude today by reiterating the government's support for touring and our commitment to our creative and our cultural industries. While our exit from the EU inevitably means that there will be changes, by working together, I'm confident that we can support touring to resume as soon as possible. Thank you again for having me here today. I'm going to keenly follow the rest of today's events, and I look very much forward to our continued engagement over the weeks and months ahead. Thank you.